Welcome to yet another edition of the Stats and Stacks podcast. For today, we're going over UFC Vegas 90, Curtis versus Allen. First things first, make sure you hit that subscribe, give a follow over on Twitter, over on Instagram, over on TikTok, wherever there's social media. There's the Stats and Stacks podcast. First things first, had a lock lose last week. It sucked. We lost Melissa Cotto right off the bat on the card. Her opponent wasn't able to go. She obviously would have went out there and dominated, which sucked, but we still believed in Bill Algeo. That was my lock of locks on the card, and he got it. Was a little bit of an early stoppage, but it shouldn't have been in this situation. It's a dangerous game we play in MMA. We had no dogs come through. We only had one total come through. It was a pretty rough week. We were riding high for quite some time. Last week, it all came crashing down. So we're looking to return to the mean. And honestly, this card is initially, I thought it was one of the worst cards I ever saw. But as I continually did fight research, any card is good when you have winning bets. And there's a lot of just live dogs on this card. So it's going to be the wild, wild west here. But I feel like we're going to go dog hunting, and I think we're going to come out profitable doing so. So again, make sure you take your own reads. Make sure you give a follow everywhere there is to follow, as we place our official bets on there each and every week. And I sit here and I tell you that you might be able to bet the dog in every single matchup. And then we start the fight. We start the fight week off with Melissa Tanya Mullins, aka Melissa Dixon, going against Nora Cornhole. And sorry, Cornoli. I'm so used to calling her Cornhole. Nora Cornoli. And this is actually one where I'm going to take the favorite here. We have Melissa Mullins at minus 355. Come back on Cannoli plus 280. Over under set at 2.5. Over 2.5 minus 250. Under 2.5 at plus 190. Let me tell you why. Melissa Mullins is someone that has high fight IQ. And that's something I value basically some of the most in MMA. I value your cardio, your durability, and your fight IQ. Those are the things that were really, really, really important to me. And Melissa seems to have all of them to an extent. I have seen her rocked in multiple fights, but she's never been fully put out. Obviously, she's 6-0. You're going to say she's 32 when she's 6-0. That's not great. But she has an extensive amateur record. She has a ton of amateur fights. So she has more experience than her record would lead you to believe, even fighting some girls that are now in the UFC on her amateur record. So it is what it is. Has a win over Daria, who just got a win in the UFC 2 weeks ago. Has a win over Irene Alexieva in the UFC. Already has UFC experience here. Yeah, man, 32, 6-0. She carries a ton of power for someone in this weight class. Women's MMA doesn't usually have a ton of knockouts, but she does. And Fish is ground and pound. She's sneaky good on the ground. I believe she's still a brown belt right now. But again, in like low level women's MMA and in heavyweight, if you can wrestle or have a ground game, it's a significant advantage. And she can, man. She has good jujitsu, and she has power on the feet. Her wrestling's okay. It's not good. It's not bad. It's serviceable, especially in women's MMA. But she will start wrestling if she's getting outworked. So, like, she will try to strike a little because she believes in her power so much. But if you're piecing her up, she does switch up game plans and immediately start to wrestle you, which I love. And her cardio's okay. So she shows good fight IQ. She has the capability to do so. And her cardio checks out. So I do like Melissa Dixon quite a bit, or Melissa Mullins now that she got married. On the other side, I bet Nora Cornoli in her UFC debut. I did not think she won the fight, but I was glad to take the money and run, and I'll never do it again. Cornoli is a one-dimensional Muay Thai striker. She has a 37% takedown defense. Now that's only off of one fight, so you could say it's skewed, but it was against Jocelyn Edwards, who is a god awful wrestler. So the fact that you got taken down that many times by Jocelyn Edwards, very concerning. Melissa should eat your lunch. Her jiu-jitsu did not look good. She almost got choked out by Jocelyn Edwards, who again has no jiu-jitsu. Not a good look. Her cardio checked out. She slowed down, but she didn't gas out. I would say it's pretty much a wash in the cardio department. But otherwise, she's fought absolutely nobodies. You want to talk about no experience? She has 8 professional fights herself, so not much more experience. I will say she's probably a touch, but she's probably better on the feet. But Melissa hits harder. Melissa's the better grappler. Melissa's the better wrestler. Melissa has more experience, actually. She's fought the better girls. So, yeah, everything leads toward Melissa here. And that's why I have to go. Bernoulli was signed to the UFC because they had an event in France and they needed a French fighter. Well, this is in the UFC Apex. This is where Dixon, aka Mullins, has already gotten a win, and this is where she's going to get her second UFC win. So the pick is going to be Melissa Mullins. The bet is going to be Melissa Mullins. Next fight of the night, we are looking at Dylan Butka at -155 going up against Cesar Almeida at +130. Over under setting at 2.5. Over 2.5 is -175. Under 2.5 at +135. Let's start with Cesar Almeida because let's be real, he's not UFC caliber. The only reason he's in the UFC is because he has a win over Alex Pereira. He's 4-0. No experience whatsoever when it comes to jiu-jitsu and wrestling outside of what he's been training for the last few years. Obviously a very good striker. He's a glory kickboxer. Has a ton of experience in the striking realm, but he's 36 years old. Like we've seen this over and over and over again with these glory kickboxing guys. They come over because they're not making money. They try to do the UFC thing. And again, he's fine. He looked fine as UFC. It wasn't a UFC debut in his contender series fight. He fought a pretty well-rounded kid, but he knew him, and it was kind of awkward. At the end of the day, he's exactly what you would think he is. He has good striking, not really any jujitsu, and his wrestling. His defense was weird. It wasn't good. It doesn't show a good percentage. He got taken down 3 times in that fight. But the technical skills, and I could see his his sprawl. He had a decent sprawl on him. He still got taken down after a while, but he had a decent little sprawl on him. If you're a good wrestler, you'll take him down. If you're not going to get him down, or he'll get right back up. And that's weird where you're fighting Dylan Butka, who is predominantly a wrestler. Butka is taking this fight on short notice. Originally, Cesar Almeida was supposed to fight Josh Fremd in this matchup. They're trying to set him up for success. And now they're just doing contender series winner versus contender series winner as a pivot. Budka, again, I mentioned, is a wrestler, wrestled over at Notre Dame College in Ohio. Not the Fighting Irish, but the Notre Dame College in Ohio. He won his fight on Contender Series. It was very lackluster. He hardly landed any strikes. He's extremely low volume. His striking's not really that good at all. He hits decently hard, but he's just technically not sound. And I think part of that's because he's 24 years old. I'm sick of trusting these young kids. I have to bet them sometimes as they're put in the best situation. But do I like trusting them? No. And I can't trust him here as a favorite on short notice with virtually no striking going up against a glory kickboxer. Don't get me wrong. He's going to have the wrestling edge. His jujitsu's not that good. And he's been chin checked quite a bit. He's never been knocked out, but I have seen him rocked from time to time. And honestly, for someone who predicates their whole fight game on wrestling, he does spend a lot of time up in the clinch. Like he doesn't necessarily just take you down and hold you down. He'll spend a lot of time up against a cage, and he does not care if the crowd is booing. And to make things worse, there is no crowd. We're in the fucking Apex, so he's going to want to just hold Almeida against a cage the entire time. But I don't know if he's going to want to be clinching for extended period of time with someone so profound in the striking realm. Like it's not a good idea. He's going to actually have to get the takedown. Is that going to gas him out repeatedly doing that? I don't know. Almeida's cardio seemed fine in his contender series fight, so I don't know, man. It's sheer dog or pass. I was gonna stay away from this fight until I saw Almeida was +130. That kind of shocked me, to be honest with you. I'm not trusting the 24-year-old kid on short notice that can't strike to go against a glory kickboxer. It makes zero sense. The pick is gonna be Cesar Almeida. The bet's gonna be Cesar Almeida. And that's going to kind of start our run of dogs. We have one here, and we're going with the dog here, and Daniel Argueta at +140. His opponent's decent, man. John Matsumoto at -160. Over under sitting at 2.5. Over 2.5 -280. Under 2.5 at +210. I'll be honest with you. I couldn't remember who John Matsumoto was until I went back and watched a fight tape and realized he's real. I mean, he's 14-0 for a reason, but this is again trusting these young kids as these big favorites. He's also 24 years old. Unlike Buck Up, he can strike. He can wrestle. He does have good jiu-jitsu. He's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt. He got a decent win over Casey Tanner on Contender Series. He's a Contender Series guy. Don't get me wrong, Casey Tanner had something going on with him during that. I remember betting Casey Tanner then. And I know that he had something wrong going on that means he wasn't able to wrestle the way he wanted to. And he straight up didn't wrestle until like the last minute of the second round. And he tried to wrestle a little bit in the third round, but you could tell something was wrong. Casey Tanner goes out there and wrestles every single fight. He didn't wrestle at all in that matchup. So something was clearly wrong. And the few times that he did wrestle, he did get him down twice. And that's the part that concerns me. Matsumoto is 14-0, so he has the confidence. He's undefeated. He has the experience. He's fought in the Apex before, being a Dana White Contender Series guy. He has good jiu-jitsu, being a black belt. He has high volume and good striking. His wrestling on the regional scene was fine offensively. Defensively, he could be a little bit of a liability. He's a little hittable on the feet. I'm not a fan there. And he'll play guard a little. He has good cardio. That's a great thing. But yeah, he plays guard a little way too much for my liking. Especially as a huge favorite here. On the other side, we have Dan Argueta. Again, he's not someone that I generally want to trust. But he's not terrible. It's just a matter of what version you're getting. He's predominantly just a wrestler. He has good jujitsu. I believe he's a black belt himself. If not, he should be. He's pretty damn good on the ground. The problem is he jumps guillotine a lot. He will jump gilly. I've seen Matsumoto shoot takedowns and they're only doubles. I don't know if Dan will be able to resist the urge to jump gilly. I don't want Matsumoto on top of Dan. I want Dan on top of Matsumoto. And I do think he can get him down there. If hurt Casey Tanner can get him down, why can Dan Argueta not? Dan Argueta's fought the better competition fighting Miles Johns. Well, he fought juiced Miles Johns. He fought Ricky Tercios. He fought Diego Silva's not bad on the regional scene, honestly. He fought some pretty decent guys. His striking's not good. Matsumoto is far and above the better striker. He's extremely low volume while he's on the feet, to be honest with you. But I think this matchup comes down to the wrestling. I think the jiu-jitsu is a wash. I think they are both very, very good on the ground. I think the striking is clearly Matsumoto, and I think the wrestling is gonna be Argueta. And if you have a if it comes down to wrestling, give me the American wrestling of the 30-year-old. I think we're going to see a grown man strength versus someone that's still developing. We just saw Blanchfield lose last week, and she got tossed around the cage. She was not ready for just a grown woman. Hands down, it was physicality. And if this could be the exact same thing, and I'm going to take the physicality again in Argueta as the older dog. The pick is going to be Daniel Argueta. The bet's going to be Daniel Argueta. And then that takes us to, again, more old dogs. We have Cynthia Calvillo at plus 115, going up against Piera Rodriguez at minus 135. Over under sitting at 2.5. Over 2.5 minus 360. Under 2.5 at plus 260. Let's start with Piera Rodriguez. Piera Rodriguez is someone that I've bookmarked to fade constantly. I don't think she's that good. And she on paper has good jujitsu, but it looks very, very sloppy when she's in the octagon. Her wrestling's okay offensively, but defensively, she has a 66% takedown defense. She fought Jillian Robertson and let Jillian take her down multiple times. Jillian Robertson is world class on the ground. But Jillian Robertson is a terrible wrestler. She's a very bad wrestler. She's a horrible striker. Rodriguez striking is very proficient. It's not good, but it's a whole bunch of 1-2s and just scooting around the octagon. And then she'll mix in a takedown to keep you honest. So, I mean, she has the physical tools. She just can't use them, and she can't blend them all together for some reason. She's not like one of these young kids. She's 31 years old. So it's not that she's just super young and hasn't figured it out yet. I don't know what her deal is. She's just not very good. She's adequate, but can't put it together, and she just tries to muscle you. She muscled the hell out of Kay Hansen. She muscled the hell out of Sam Hughes, and then she gets tired doing so, and she's basically a sitting duck in the third round. We saw Jillian Robertson submit her with just a few seconds left in round two. I know it was controversial. She said she didn't tap. Her arm would have snapped off. It's a good thing that the ref stepped in, to be honest with you. But again, that's another example of her fading late in the fight. She loses the round three to Kay Hansen, loses the round three to Sam Hughes. She slows down. She muscles everything. It's not too technical. It just looks very stiff and rigid. And then she slows down in her fight. On the other side, we have Cynthia Calvillo, where first and foremost, we don't know if this fight's going to take place because Cynthia Calvillo has effectively made 115 like two times in her career. She has a history at 115, but she misses weight all the fucking time. Like she does not ever make 115. The UFC eventually made her go up to 125, where she didn't fare so well, to be honest with you. She has a win over Jessica Eye at 125. That's nice. But the rest of her 125 run is not great, honestly. And I mean, don't get me wrong. Has she lost five in a row? Yes. Were they the good competition? Yeah. Caitlin, it says Seminara, throws me off every time. Caitlin Chukagian is a really good fighter, and she has fought for a world title. Jessica Andrade is a former world champion. Andrea Lee, that one's not that big of a loss, or not that great of a loss. It's all right. She's okay. She's a perennial top 10 girl. Nina Nunez at one point was ranked number 3, and then Lupita Godinez is a top 10 girl at 115. And that's the thing. She went back down to 115 in her last fight. I thought she looked good. Loopy's someone that goes out there and is known to go out there and muscle you, just like Pierre Rodriguez tries to do. But Cynthia was out muscling her. Cynthia got the only takedown in the fight. Cynthia's the better wrestler in this matchup. Cynthia throws more volume in this matchup and is honestly is probably the better striker. Better jiu-jitsu. On paper, it's supposed to be Rodriguez, but again, she's super sloppy, and Cynthia can definitely hold her own. Cynthia's fought the better level of competition. She's a 77% takedown defense herself, so she won't be easy to get down. She has all of the advantages, literally, outside of one thing: weight. Is this fight going to happen? Is she going to make weight? Is it going to impact her performance? Also, she's 36 years old. So, I mean, in women's MMA, is 36 a death sentence? No. We see a lot of older women do perfectly fine, but is she definitely on her way out? Absolutely. So you do have to be very cognizant of that. At the end of the day, I think Calvia has a whole bunch of red flags, but I do think she's the better fighter, and she has the plus sign next to her name. So that's why we're going her direction, baby. We have a third dog in a row. The pick is going to be Cynthia Calvillo. The bet's going to be Cynthia Calvillo. Then that takes us to another women's MMA fight. We have Big Norm, Donkalicious herself, Norma Dumont at minus 155, going up against Jermaine Durandamine at plus 130. Over under at 2.5. Over 2.5 minus 315. Under 2.5 at plus 230. This one's going to be very interesting. I'll be honest with you. We have, and I'll come back to the fight that they just added right after this. I'll be honest with you. We have a rule where you don't turn your back on your boys. Norm, Norm's my girl. Is she that good? No. Should she be the favorite in this matchup? Probably not. But I understand it. Big Norm is good striking, sneaky power, okay jujitsu. It's not as bad as you think. She just, I don't know. She plays with her food a little bit down there. Her wrestling, I've seen her hit inside trips. I've seen her hit single legs. I've seen her hit blast doubles. Her wrestling's actually sneaky good. The problem with Big Norm here, is that one, she's a counter striker, and so is Jermaine Durandamine. So that's going to get weird. I hate when you have two counter strikers go at it against each other. It's generally pretty boring, and sometimes someone does something that makes them feel uncomfortable. It's up in the air when you have two counter strikers fight each other. Other red flag with Big Norm is that the featherweight division is officially dead. It's dead. The UFC is, with Amanda Nunes gone, they're trying to get rid of 145. In doing so, these women that fight at 145 are forced to make 135. Has Big Norm made 135? No, she misses weight every fucking time. We don't know if this fight is going to take place. Big Norm is too big of a donk to make 135. She will have to shave off or cut off half of her ass to make 135. She's got to do something because it is not working out. Literally has not made it yet. She's tried multiple times, cannot make 135. She's also a little chinny at times. We saw her get knocked out by Megan Anderson. We saw her get rocked by Carol Hosa. Like we've seen her rocked multiple times. Um, my biggest problem with Norm is definitely the weight cut and the fact that she struggles with lanky fighters, man. Big Norm is 10-2. Her losses are to Macy Chazon, who's a tall, lanky fighter, who actually used a lot of wrestling to get that win, which was surprising, but it's still a tall, lanky fighter that she struggled with, and Megan Anderson, like the tallest girl in the UFC ever. She also fought Danielle Wolf. She looked good there, who's a tall, lanky fighter, but outside of that, her only two losses are to tall, lanky fighters. What does she have here? And Jermaine Durandamy, a tall, lanky fighter. Very concerning. You would think, and Jermaine is a former champion in the UFC at 145. You would think, does she have problems making 135? No, she's been champ at 145. She refused to fight Chris Cyborg without a whole bunch of just steroid tests, and I think she failed, or Cyborg failed, so she refused to fight Cyborg, and then it became a big thing, and the UFC stripped her after a while. It was this big thing. And then JDR, excuse me, GDR, dropped down to 135 and was killing girls at 135. Ultimately fought for the title against Amanda Nunes. I would say it's a close fight. Not really. Nunes just grapple fucked her the entire time. GDR is a good fighter, though. Former champ, fought for a title in two different weight classes. World class striking, high striking pedigree. Good UFC wins, good UFC losses, power on her side. Everything looks good for her. The problem with her is that she's very low volume. Why? Because she's a counter striker. We had two counter strikers going at it. She'll have a 5-inch reach advantage, which is nice. Um, and her takedown defense, it shows 69%, but Amanda Nunes took her down 8 times, and Nunes is a damn good wrestler. That number is skewed. She actually has very good takedown defense. Big Norm's in trouble. GDR is the better striker, will probably be able to keep it on the feet. And I don't like that. I don't like that at all. Here's the issue. GDR is 39 years old, just had a child last year, and has not fought in 4 years. Concerning. I talked about Big Norm's weight red flags, not fighting for 4 years, having children, and being almost 40 years old. Concerning. Red flags everywhere. You can't take an over under because GDR could definitely sleep Big Norm. Big Norm could tap GDR. Like it's all over the place. You could take the over, but it's scary. You could bet the under. You can choose the favorite. You could choose the dog. There is too much going on in this matchup, and no one should be trusted. I'll go ahead and I'll pick Big Norm just because she's fought as of late, and it's my girl. I won't turn my back on my people. But I think she's in serious trouble. The bet, it's probably supposed to be GDR, but this is a straight pass. I just don't want to pick. I'm just going to stay away from this. The pick is going to be Big Norm. I will not have any money on this. If anything, it doesn't count. I'm not turning my back on her. If you're going to play DFS, you can make a GDR Lou for DFS. You can make a lineup there, but that is about it. Otherwise, you need to stay away from this fight. Next fight of the night, in all honesty, is probably the one I have the least amount of interest on the entire card. We have Court McGee at plus 245 going up against Alex Morono at minus 305, over 2.5 at minus 130, under 2.5 at plus 100. You know what? Actually, I take that back. We got to go back and rewind this tape real fast and do Pedro against Victor because this was actually added just a few hours ago. I did not do a ton of fight tape on Pedro Falco. I'll be honest with you. I have no idea what these lines are going to be. What I can tell you about Victor Hugo is that he is an absolute killer. His nickname, you're going to hear over and over again, his nickname is Striker, but he has multiple submission wins and a lot of knee bars. He loves knee bars as of late. He has no problem going for Eminari rolls or just giving up his back and going for a knee bar. Like he's a very just scary fighter. He carries a ton of power. But yeah, his nickname's Striker, but he has more decisions and submissions than he does knockouts. Doesn't mean he can't crack. Dude hits hard. He has decent wrestling. He's very low volume, which isn't good. But he hits very hard. He's very scary everywhere. He can beat you anywhere. Does he have quality wins? Yeah, he actually does. His record, his level of competition's not bad at all. Like, there's not really not much not to like about Victor Hugo. The things I don't like is the volume and the cardio. He does seem like he's slowing down in every single one of his fights. So you do have to watch his cardio. Cardio is king in the UFC. If you don't have cardio, you're in some trouble. On the other side, we have Pedro Falco, who I did the least amount of fight tape for, but I do know he was on Contender Series in 2021. So I did do fight tape on him 3 years ago. Do I remember all of it? No. Some of it came back as I was looking at his record. He has a little more cupcakey record than Victor does, but he trains over at Novo União, which is a good camp. They have Fiolo, who we just saw a few weeks ago, beat the hell out of Ode Osborne. Obviously, the best person from Nova União is Jose Aldo, who's coming back. They're just known for having a lot of really good fighters over at that fight camp, and they're all very versatile. Falco himself, he has a lot of submission wins. He has a lot of knockouts. His wrestling looks okay. He's just overall kind of a generalist. I just wish he had a little better level of competition before coming into the UFC. But again, he passed his test with flying colors. Came to Dana White Contender Series and got a quick finish. So he didn't get the thing with him is he didn't get the contract for some reason. And then he didn't fight for 2 years. It's from 2021 to 2023, and then he just fought like 6 months ago. So I don't know why he didn't fight for 2 years. To me, that screams injury. He's 30, 31 years old, I believe. So he's not young. To randomly not fight during that time frame seems odd. It definitely had to be an injury. But he's back now, and he's a good fighter. Victor Hugo's a good fighter. This is one of the best fights that no one knows who they are and no one cares. But this is going to be a fun one for as long as it lasts. It's straight dog or pass. I have no idea who the favorite is. I have no idea who the dog is. Both these men are Brazilian and capable of winning this fight. Both these men are underrated. And whoever the one that's most underrated is going to be the dog, and that's the way my money's going to go. So the pick is going to be the dog. The bet's going to be whoever the dog is. It's literally a 50-50 fight. But I do think because Pedro's taking this on short notice, he's going to ultimately be the dog, and it's going to be some off number. And that takes us back to McGee. Again, McGee has a plus 245 dog, Morono at minus 305, over 2.5 minus 130, under 2.5 plus 100. We don't have to spend a lot of time on this matchup because it kind of sucks. Court McGee's old. Court McGee is 39 years old and needs to retire. McGee has a 3.5 inch reach advantage here, which is nice. But his striking's okay, but he carries no power and no threat at all. His jujitsu's okay, but he doesn't usually use it offensively. He's just never been submitted in his career. His cardio is good. It generally checks out. Is he slowing down at 39? I don't know because he keeps getting knocked the fuck out all of a sudden. He is someone that was never finished in his entire career, and then all of a sudden, his last two fights, round one knockouts. Why? Because he's 39 years old and the chin is gone. So at that juncture, he has okay wrestling, but we saw him not wrestle Carlos Condit, so we don't know about his fight IQ anymore. I think he's just there to try to get 50 Gs, have a good time, and get on out. He knows his time is up. He knows he's retiring soon. He doesn't want a boring fight. He doesn't want to just take you down and hold you down. He wants to throw down. Has that been working for him? No, not at all. It worked against Claudio Silva, who can't strike and is just a grappler. It worked against Ramiz Brahimaj, who can't strike and is just a grappler. Problem with Alex Morono is that he's both. Alex Morono is someone I cannot stand. I think part of it is his nickname. It just feels low key racist. The Great White, with him having a bald head like that, very concerning in my eyes. But whatever. I'm just making assumptions. Who knows? Maybe he's a nice guy. But age 33. He's about to leave his prime, but he's still currently in it. I will give him that he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, so he's very good on the ground, just like the last few people that Court McGee beat. They are Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts. Difference is Alex Moreno can throw hands. Morono throws a ton of volume. I mean, it's good on the feet. It's predominantly boxing, not a lot of kicks or anything like that. But a lot of good striking, man. We saw him beat the hell out of Santino Ponzinibbio before he got caught. We saw him get dropped by Anthony Pettis. We saw him get killed by Chaos Williams in 20 seconds. So yeah, problem with this guy is his chin. He gets dropped all the fucking time. He gets knocked out all the fucking time. Joaquin Buckley didn't knock him out, but did drop him. He's rocking 50% takedown defense. Why? Because he's so confident on the ground. It doesn't look like he cares too much. But as a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, he's not utilizing his wrestling. In fact, he didn't get his first takedown until he fought Reese McKee. And oh god, the performance Reese just put on. That was back in 2020. We saw him wrestle a little against, or was it who did it? Was it Mickey Gall? I don't even recall. He just well, it was Semmelsberger. It was Semmelsberger. But he doesn't usually wrestle. He's only used his wrestling in like 2 or 3 of his matchups, and he's been in the UFC for years on years on years. He just likes to go out there and brawl. He throws a ton of volume. His cardio looks good and bad at times. And we've seen this fight before. Court McGee is not much different than Tim Means, an old 39-year-old man who goes out there and has decent striking, is usually pretty durable, but at the end of the day is kind of limited. That's exactly what Court McGee is. Court McGee and Tim Means are the same thing. He just fought 39-year-old Tim Means last year and got the guillotine choke. Is he going to tap out McGee? I don't know. McGee's never been submitted before. However, he was never knocked out before, and now he's been knocked out twice in a row. McGee's 39. McGee's getting old. No way I'm betting him. Do I want to trust Morono, who sometimes has cardio issues and a bad chin, at minus 305? No. The good news is Court McGee can't knock out anything. So at that point, I feel comfortable that Morono won the first two, and then all he has to do is survive. So the pick is going to be Alex Morono. The bet's going to be Alex Morono. Then that takes us to honestly the best fight of the evening. We have Wild Man Trevor Peek at plus 150 going up against Charlie Campbell at minus 185. Over under set at 1.5, and they're expecting fireworks, folks. Over 1.5 is plus money at plus 125. Under 1.5 at minus 160. Which guy is causing this crazy line? Plot twist. Both. Let's start with Trevor Peek. Trevor Peek is someone who is from Tennessee, was training out of Tennessee recently, joined up with Dwayne Ludwig. I can't say what he's good at. He's an athlete. He has a ton of power. His cardio I've seen look good and bad. It's just a matter of if he's able to pace himself. He has good cardio. He just has to pace himself. He gets a little out of control in there. Trevor Peek is a fighter, man. He's not a wrestler. He's not a striker. He's not a jiu-jitsu practitioner. He's a fighter. He is out there, and you watch him 5 years ago in a bar brawl, and you watch him Saturday night in the octagon, probably fighting the same fucking way. Carries a ton of power, reckless abandon. You'll see him throw that padded and trademarked hammer fist from standing. But outside of how fun he is and how he just brawls, has a 50% takedown defense. That's not great. If he doesn't get you out of there in round 1 or 2 like he usually does, he will slow, and his cardio seems to kind of fall off a cliff in round 3. He's really good going forward, but if you back him up, he seems to kind of struggle a little bit. And he gets chin checked all the fucking time. He's very, very, very easy to hit. His jiu-jitsu is not good whatsoever. Like all the things you need to be good at, he's not. But he's tough and he's a fighter, and he's coming out here with a ton of power, and he doesn't die. He just keeps coming at you. Again, I've seen him stumbling everywhere across the octagon. But he doesn't stop. He just marches forward like a zombie until he tries to put you out. And he's dangerous all 15 minutes. He is there to hurt. Some of these guys are out there and it's mixed martial arts and they consider it an actual art. You see like the Israel Adesanyas of the world where they're just trying to paint a masterpiece. Robert Whitaker will go out there and jab your face off, mixing some takedowns, and it's just like a pretty fight. Trevor Peek, this is the ultimate fighting championship to him. He is out here to fight. He's just brawling at this point. On the other side, he has a good dance partner in Charlie Campbell. Charlie Campbell, someone who could go out there realistically, considering where he trains over at Serra-Longo, would probably go out there, take you down, backpack you, and have a nice, safe, easy time. But that's not what he does. He goes out there and he himself brawls. He'll have a 2.5-inch reach advantage. I will say he's a little cleaner than Trevor Peak. I think everyone is cleaner than Trevor Peak. But he loves to get into a firefight, man. There's one thing to get into a brawl, it's another thing to just throw down technically. That's what Charlie Campbell seems to do. Difference is when Peak gets hit, he gets wobbled. When Campbell gets hit, he goes out. He's been knocked out multiple times. He's been chin checked multiple times. And it's always when he just gets into a firefight. He gets goaded into it. He's sitting there, he's piecing you up. He has a nice jab on him. He'll jab you a few times. And then you hit him once and he just spazzes. It's like he sees red and just starts going at you. And Trevor Peak, all he does is go at you. So that's why they have this at 1.5. Campbell does have some decent power on him. And again, he's at Serra-Longo. He has good jiu-jitsu. He had good wrestling by default being at that camp. It is a grapple heavy camp. He can do it. But you know who he is? Matt Frivola. That's the other guy he trains with. Matt Frivola will mix in a takedown from here and there, but he mainly wants to go out there, use his power, and brawl. Uh, that's exactly what Charlie Campbell does. So I don't know if it's something about at 155 at that gym you have to be crazy and a lunatic, but they both are. So uh, I don't know. At the end of the day, I will take the talent in Charlie Campbell, and he does always go forward. Again, Trevor Peak is much better. Is much better when he's going forward. So if they meet in the middle, whoever lands first goes out, or whoever lands first wins. If Charlie is able to push Peak back, it concerns me for Peak, but I do think Peak is live. I think the line's off at plus 150. So for that reason, I'm gonna pick Charlie Campbell. But if I'm betting anything, I'm gonna bet Trevor Peak and hope for the best. I'll always take Peak as a dog. He is someone that will fight for your money. Next fight of the night, uh, in short term, has me fucked up. We have Lucas Bresky as a plus 225 dog going up against Walter Walker at minus 280. Over under set at 1.5. Over 1.5 at minus 165. Under 1.5 at plus 130. I'll be honest with you. When I initially saw Walker, I saw a heavyweight that's going out there and utilizing wrestling. Again, if you can wrestle as a heavyweight, it's a cheat code. So I saw Walker go out there and get good takedowns. I see that he's 26 years old, so he's only going to get better. I see that he's 11-0. He's going to be very confident. Has never lost a professional fight. I'm going to see that he has a 3-inch reach advantage. He's going to weigh in at 265 pounds. He's one of the guys that cut. He's a big boy. He's going to have a huge size advantage in this matchup. I see that he has okay jiu-jitsu. He knows what's going on the ground after he takes you down. I see that his striking's not good. It's a little wild. Nothing but looping hooks and head kicks are the only things that he throws, and all at 100% power. But I see that he has a ton of power. If he connects, you're going out. He's a big boy, and he throws everything he has at you, and you usually go out if he connects. I see that he has a ton of pressure going forward. All of these are good things. And then I saw it. He looked familiar. And I kept thinking, do I know this guy? Was he on Contender Series? No. Was he on a regional scene show that I saw? No. Why does he look so goddamn familiar? And then I saw it. His last name's Walker. He's the little brother of Johnny Weirdo Walker. Red flag. Can't do it. Red flag. Red of the reddest fucking flags. Absolutely not. Then I realized he has zero striking defense, like whatsoever. Johnny has no chin. God forbid Walker has it, or this guy Volter has a chin. We have no idea. Um, I don't know. He seems to slow down in this fight. Don't get me wrong, he will fight through the exhaustion. He's one of these guys that can continue to fight while on E. He will be on E at the end of round one. He will have nothing left, but he'll keep pushing through. I'll give the devil his due. But he is Johnny Weirdo Walker's little brother. No, I locked this guy. Felt good about this guy. Saw that, instantly took it back. Fuck no. Absolutely not. You're gonna have to be a serious reason to bet Johnny Walker's little brother ever put money on Johnny Walker's little brother. I'm fucking close. Lucas Bresky's trash. Lucas Bresky is someone that should be fighting at light heavyweight, if we're gonna be perfectly frank. His striking's not good. I used to think he had good striking. and went back into the fight tape, he doesn't. It's not good striking. He just has a very, very fraudulent record. He's literally fighting people that have, let's look at their records. He fought Dylan Potter, who was who fought at middleweight for quite some time. Took a fight on short notice at heavyweight for the Contender Series. He fought Martin Budai and lost a split decision. That one was kind of weird. I actually thought he won. Carl Williams is a light heavyweight. He went out there and got dominated. He got dropped and taken down 8 times. We saw Waldo Costa knock him out, who has 0 knockouts in the UFC. In fact, he has 1. Who was it to? Lucas Bresky is the only guy that he's ever been able to finish inside the octagon. He has wins over, and before the Contender Series, the guys he fought were 3-1. There was a very fraudulent 20-5 guy in here. There's a guy that was 18-10 that went to a draw. 4-2, 6-1, 1-0, 6-6, 1-1. Can't find their record. Can't find their record. So yeah, he legitimately fought 2 guys. He fought 2 legitimate guys before the UFC. Not the greatest. Not the greatest look at all. Again, he has bad takedown defense. It's sitting at 42% right now. He throws a ton of volume. I'll give him that. And as he was racking up these wins on the regional scene against these nobodies who literally are so bad they don't have records on Tapology, he is someone that had juice problems. So he was on the fucking juice. He was on the gear, and roided up Bresky was questionable at best. So I don't know, man. He's small. He's not on. Is he on the juice now? USADA's gone. We keep seeing these old men come back and look great on the juice. Hey, maybe Court McGee's live. GDR, maybe she's live, man. Is Bresky live? I'll be honest. I haven't seen it, but Die Hard MMA podcast, shout out Clint, did say that it looked like he was on this good stuff and looked very in shape for this matchup. So is he taking advantage of USADA not being here? I mean, I'm curious. It has me thinking about it. I see the line, I see the potential, but then I just remember how bad this guy is. 42% takedown defense, getting knocked out by people with 0 power. Can't bet him. Definitely can't trust Johnny Walker's little brother. He's gonna be the pick of Walter Walker. Can I bet him at this price tag in a debut? No, I don't want to do that. I also don't want to choose an over under. The right thing to stay away from this fight. If you want to get fucking crazy and rip your hair out, you can bet Walter Walker, but I am staying. Someone I will end up betting on is Ignacio Bahamondes at -340. He takes on Christos Giagos at +270. Over under set at 1.5. Over 1.5 is -180. Under 1.5 at +140. Let's start with Ignacio. He did let me down in his last fight up against Ludovic Klein, but Ludovic Klein's sneaky good. I always thought he was good, and then I started to believe maybe he's not. No, he is. He's legitimately good. Bahamondes is only 26 too. He's gonna make young man mistakes. He's a 4-inch reach advantage. He has really good striking, world-class striking. His jiu-jitsu sneaky good. It's not great, but it's okay. He has good defensive wrestling. He'll never try to take you down, but he's rocking an 85% takedown defense. That's a good look. Ludovic Klein was able to get him down 3 times. He just wasn't expecting it, but in retrospect, he got up all 3 times and did not spend a lot of time on his back. He's not someone that just plays guard. If you take him down, he wants to get right back up. And when he does, he's going to throw. He throws a ton of volume, really high volume, and a good motor to go with it. He's 26. He takes advantage of his youth. He has good cardio. He has good striking. He has good takedown defense. He's going to force you to stand and bang. And usually he's coming out on top. On the other side, we have Giagos, who is a wrestler and jiu-jitsu practitioner. His BJJ is okay. It's not great, but it's serviceable. But his wrestling is the best part of his game. Can he strike a little bit? It's all right. He does carry some pretty decent power. I'll give him that. But he's fought some good level competition, but he's 34. He's not improving anymore. He's over at Sanford MMA, which is a good camp, but we're not seeing much improvement. All they've really done is make him stronger, but he's still not a good striker. He still doesn't have a good gas tank. And that's the biggest thing. Gas is key. We've seen him knocked out a few times, so his durability is in question. So all the things you really want in regards to good cardio and good durability. He has neither. And honestly, we saw this fight before. We saw him fight Daniel Zuhuber, who is a young, like 24-year-old lanky kickboxer. And that's exactly what he has here. He looked fine round one, to be honest with you, but Daniel's always a slow starter. And then Daniel started to pick it up, and then Daniel subbed him. So at the end of the day, I think we're going to see a lot of the same. Bahamondes is a quicker starter than Daniel is. And I think it's going to end up be Bahamondes by decision. He's not really a killer. He has a lot of knockouts, but a lot of them are in the third round, just because it's a war of attrition, and he's just not going out there and blowing his load to try to get you out of there. He's not throwing 100% into every strike. He goes out there and it's basically a sparring match. He uses his reach. Again, 4 inches in this matchup, and he uses it well. He's a good striker, sprawl and brawl, and keep you at bay. So at the end of the day, I'm going to end up picking Bahamondes. I'll stay away from the decision and just bet his money line, but you have to parlay him up. But I'm okay doing so. Pick his Bahamondes, bet his Bahamondes. Then that takes us to one of the Twitter civil wars of the evening. We have Morgan Sherry at -120 going up against Jose Mariscal at -105. Over under set at 2.5. Over 2.5 -215. Under 2.5 at +165. Let's start with Morgan. Morgan's good, man. I think Morgan's really good. I think he has good striking. He has okay jujitsu. He has good wrestling. Sorry, he is okay wrestling. He is more of a counter striker, and again, with counter strikers, you have lower volume, so you do have to watch the amount he puts out there. The problem is he fights at the level of his competition. If you're really good, he's going to fight very well. If you're very bad, he's going to fight very poorly. He is in nothing but close decisions. In fact, you want to talk about decisions? He has effectively, what is that? 19, 29 fights, 10 split decisions. That's a lot. 1/3 of your fights go to split. What is that? That's not normal. He has good cardio. He has really good takedown defense. But again, it's his volume. And part of it is because he's a counter striker. And if he just loses interest with you, he makes it a lot closer than it has to be. Uh, I don't know, man. I like him. Do I like him as a favorite? No. Is he a huge favorite? No, not anymore. It's -120. The line is coming down. Or sorry, he's -120. Mariscal at one point was +110, I saw. Right now he's at -105, and this could potentially be a line flip. And it has not really an indictment on Morgan. It's more of a play on Chepe, because Chepe keeps coming in as a dog and winning. He won't stop. He when it came out there and beat the absolute hell out of our boy Trevor Beak, who we just mentioned, beat the shit out of him. They actually train together now, which is ironic enough. He went out there against Jack Jenkins and got that weird arm injury, but it was a really close fight. The judges gave the first round to Jack Jenkins, but it was close. And the second round, I thought Chepe was winning prior to the injury. So we are looking at 1-1 before that injury occurred, and then we'll see what happens. And I think Mariscal would have ultimately won that third round. Why? Because he's super well rounded and underrated, man. This dude's 31 years old, so he's in his prime. He has really good wrestling. He initially was a wrestler when he came in and started fighting, and found striking, and now he's a really good striker. His jujitsu's good. Like it's not bad at all. You just don't see it all the time. He has good cardio. He's able to go hard 15. His durability is what people are concerned about. Yes, he got knocked out by Steve Garcia. Yes, he got knocked out by Joe Anderson Brito. Brito knocked him out. Clear and simple, clear as day. The Steve Garcia one was a little bit of an early stoppage, in my opinion. I think that should have kept going, but whatever, it is what it is. Sean Soriano is a world-class striker. Not really anything too bad there. He should have wrestled more, but he was young. He learned. He lost to Bryce Mitchell. Carlos Deaton was a no contest, and Carl Deaton was also in the UFC. Gregor Gillespie was a guy that only had one career loss and just let Father Time beat him. But he lost to Gregor Gillespie, who was at one point like a top 10 guy in the UFC. So yeah, all of these fights were prior to him coming to the UFC. Bryce Mitchell, who's top 10, Gregor Gillespie, who was top 10, Joe Anderson Brito, who's top 10, Steve Garcia, who's a top 15 currently. Yeah, all those guys, great fighters prior to UFC losses. Not bad. How about the wins? He beat Pat Sabatini, who's currently in the UFC, and I don't think he's ranked anymore, but doing well. Yusuf Zalal just looked world best in his last fight 2 weeks ago against Billy Q. What about the fact that Chabe beat the shit out of Yusuf Zalal just a few years ago? Like, he's a really good fighter. He didn't just fight good fighters previously, he beat good fighters previously. He's very, very good. He trains with Justin Gaethje, like that's his main training partner. That's a pretty decent training partner to have. Trains in elevation, which is why his cardio is so good. He's just a junkyard dog. I like everything about this guy. I like everything about Morgan too, and they're fighting each other. That's the weird thing. But at the end of the day, one guy is plus money and one's not, and that's the way I'm leaning. I'm a dog hunter. The bet is gonna be Chepe Mariscal. The bet's gonna be Chepe Mariscal. Keep betting them until the wheels fall off. Next fight is one that I've gone back and forth with because it's a style clash. We have Alexander Hernandez at minus 205 going up against Damon Jackson at plus 170. Over 2.5 is plus 135. Under 2.5 at minus 175. Let's start with Alexander Hernandez. He's someone who has all the potential to be a top five guy in the weight class, but he's just a fucking mental case, man. He has issues just up top. He's 31 years old. He seems to be controlling him a little bit. He was just a cocky little shit when he came into the UFC. At one point, I remember someone saying he was the big dick in the room. He was training with a whole bunch of guys who will never make the UFC, beating the hell out of them, coming into the UFC and got a quick knockout over a top 10 guy in Beneil Dariush. And he thought he was the shit, calling out Donald Cerrone, doing all this stuff. He went on a little bit of a losing streak. He got humbled. And now he's training at Factory X Muay Thai over with Jonathan Martinez and Brandon Royval and the aforementioned Yusuf Zalal. Like, he's at a good camp now. He's no longer the big dig in the room. He's always had good striking. He's always had good wrestling. He's always had really good power. Problem with him is that he's a little hittable. His jiu-jitsu's 50-50. It's not good, it's not bad. But his biggest issue is the fact that he slows. That's part of the reason he started training at Factory Edge Muay Thai, because of elevation. All of those guys have great cardio. Royval is known for his cardio. Martinez has okay cardio. Chris Gutierrez has good cardio. Like, all these guys have really, really, really good cardio. So let's go to that camp. Let's get a little more structure. 60% takedown defense is another concern. Now, I don't know how much being at that camp is going to help, because they're not really wrestlers, any of them, to be honest with you. But he does love the pressure forward and has so much confidence in his hands. If he connects, you go out. I loved the fight against Jim Miller. He threw over 100 significant strikes. Or sorry, he landed over 100 significant strikes. That was good to see, that he can go a hard three against a decent level of competition. Show he still has it. Still shows knockouts over Mike Breeden, again over Beneil. Has a win over Olivier Aubin Mercier, who's killing it over in PFL. OAM's nasty. He has a lot of good things going for him. And again, his losses, Bill Algeo, didn't look great last week, but usually a decent fighter. Billy Q didn't look great 2 weeks ago, but usually a good fighter. Anato Moicano is a good fighter. Tiago Moises is a good fighter. Drew Dober is a good fighter. Donald Cerrone is a good fighter. So he's only losing to guys that can be ranked in the weight class. Like, that's it. The guys he's beating, Jim Miller's old, Mike Breeden's cut, Chris Grutzmacher is cut. So if you're not UFC level, he's going to beat you. If you're a top 10, you're going to lose. What is Damon Jackson? Damon Jackson is closer to the cut category. He's 35 years old. He's at Fortis MMA, which is a good camp, and he has good wrestling. Damon Jackson has good jiu-jitsu. But Damon Jackson has 40% takedown defense himself. Damon Jackson is very low volume. Damon Jackson is very hittable on the feet. And Damon Jackson is very chinny. That's the important thing here. Just like Alexander Hernandez, Damon Jackson only has good losses. Dan Ige is good. Billy Q is good. Ilya Taporia is pretty good. So yeah, he only has good, well, Kevin Aguilar's not great, or Yancy Medeiros. But at the end of the day, he only has good losses on his record. But his wins, man, Pat Sabatini, it's okay. I'll give him that. Pat Sabatini's a pretty decent win. Dan Argueta, yeah, we're betting Dan, but Dan was taking this fight on 1 week's notice up a weight class. Kamala Kirk has been cut. Charles Rosa has been cut. Mirsad Bektik has been cut. Like, he's only fighting guys that have been cut, are all the guys that he beat. All the guys he lost to are, former champs, or Dan Ige and Billy Q. They're top 15 guys. So same can be said against Hernandez. So what are we going to do here? Are we going to take the guy that has a propensity to slow down and sometimes gets finished late? Or are we going to take the guy that has a million knockout losses, but as a wrestler grinder? They're each other's kryptonite. And at the end of the day, I'm just going to play it safe. Either Hernandez goes out there and sparks Damon Jackson early, and that under 2.5 hits, or Damon Jackson is able to survive, ultimately drain the life out of Alexander Hernandez, and then get a late sub, which the under probably hits. So what I'm going to do is juice it up a little bit more, play it safe. The pick is going to be Alexander Hernandez, but the bet is going to be the fight does not go the distance. I think that's the safest way to play this matchup. And then that takes us to the main event. If you haven't already, smash that like button, give a follow over on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, hit the subscribe button. Please show support. Please help the podcast thrive. We have Brendan all in Allen at -205 going up against Chris Action Man Curtis at +170. Over 2.5 is -175. Under 2.5 at +135. Let's start with Brendan All in Allen. I like Brendan Allen as a fighter. As a dude, he's kind of weird. But he's a good fighter, man. Very well rounded. That's my favorite part about fighters, or when they're well rounded. He has good striking. His wrestling's okay. It's gotten much better. I will give the double his due. He only shoots single legs. I literally went back, watched all of his takedowns. They're all single leg takedowns. That's his only takedown. And he's pretty decent at it. It's a pretty good single leg. And his jiu-jitsu is world class. Like, he's tapping out Andre Muniz. He's topping out Paul Craig. They're all rear naked chokes usually. But his jiu-jitsu, at the end of the day, defending everything against some of these world class guys, his jiu-jitsu is literally world class. Very, very good. His cardio seems to check out. Doesn't get too tired. My problem with Brendan Allen is that he has a 58% takedown defense. Not going to be a problem in this matchup because Chris Curtis doesn't wrestle. However, I think Brendan Allen's low-key chinny. We've seen him rocked in multiple fights. We saw him knocked out against Sean Strickland, who is not a power puncher. Don't get me wrong, Sean Strickland's really, really good, but he's not a power puncher by any means. We've seen him rocked in multiple fights, and then we saw him knocked out by Chris Curtis, the man he's fighting now. So again, Allen has gotten much better since their last matchup. Allen is the better jiu-jitsu practitioner. The wrestling's a wash because Curtis is really good takedown defense. We won't use it offensively. So it's a wash. And on the feet, Allen has gotten much better. And he's good. He's very serviceable on the feet. But I think Curtis is better on the feet. And that's where the issue lies. Chris Curtis has a 92% takedown defense. And it's not skewed. It's not, he's only stuffed like 3 takedowns. No, the man has stuffed like 40 takedowns in the octagon. He's damn near impossible to take down. 92% takedown defense. So what does that do? That turns this fight into a striking fight. Who is the better striker? I just said Brendan's has gotten better and Brendan is a good striker. Is he to the level of Action Man? Right now, I'd say no. I think Action Man has the striking edge. He is predominantly a counter striker, so sometimes people will say his fights are boring. But unlike other counter strikers, he does throw pretty high volume for having that style. He's a slow starter, man. He is a Peter Yan type where he is not going to win the first round. I promise you, he will not win the first round. But he analyzes his data and then he picks it up in the second round. And then the third round, he's on. And the problem with this is that it's a main event. So not only do you give him the back half of the second and the third, you're giving him the fourth round to pour it on you, the fifth round to pour it on you. He has more time to do what he likes to do. He's awfully durable, and when you do hit him, he just rolls with the punches. So I don't. He's been knocked out once, and that was a controversy about him fighting multiple pro fights within like 2 hours of each other. So that was interesting. Good cardio. Excuse me, good cardio. He does look like he's slowing down a little bit. So he's 36 years old. Be weary of that. He is slowing down a touch. He packs a ton of power, but his jujitsu's questionable. I did see him put in some pretty bad situations on the ground. If Brendan Allen gets his back, he's in serious trouble. But at the end of the day, I don't think Brendan Allen's going to get his back. 92% takedown defense. So that makes this a striking fight. I have a good friend, literally probably my best friend on the planet, says you never have a fight end the same way in the rematch than it did originally. We saw it in the Davidson Figueroa fight. It went to decision. Then all of a sudden it was a submission for Brandon Moreno. We saw it in the Alexa Grasso Shevchenko fight. It was a submission, then it went to decision. Like, I'm just trying to think of some of these rematches. They never play out the same way. Like Matt Hughes versus BJ Penn. What are other some of these rematches? Like, they just never play out the same way. The over unders, it just never comes to fruition. The first fight was a second round KO. I think this one go the distance. I truly do. And I think it's going to ultimately, honestly, wouldn't shock me if it's a split decision, the way Chris Curtis analyzes and fights. It could very well be a split decision. So I don't hate the over. I understand the Allen love, but I do think Chris Curtis is the side here. The pick is going to be Chris Curtis. The bet is going to be Chris Curtis. I will have his plus 170 money line, and I might go ahead and sprinkle a Chris by split or a Chris by decision in general, contingent on what those numbers are. And that is UFC Vegas 90 13 fights on the card. Again, it's not the greatest, sexiest looking card known to man. However, it is 1 week before UFC 300. I appreciate us having any card. And in all honesty, if you have money on all these dogs, it could be a fun night as you're just cheering for the dog and making money. So let's go ahead. Any night is a good night if you're getting paid. Let's get it.